All right, so here we'll go over the topic that's called adult children of emotionally immature parents. Where did the whole idea came from? So let's get back to this a little bit, which says that the book itself, with author Lindsay Gibson, came out on June 1st, 2015. So prior to it, it was not necessarily that much viewed as such or that much explored. So we were in the dark. Well, thank God now we have a bit more idea of how it goes and how it works. So here is the key ideas from the Blinkist, which I scouted, and I do apologize, but here we go. So this is a guide to healing childhood trauma caused by emotionally immature parents. Although society is accustomed to the idea that the parents are supposed to be more mature than their children, this doesn't always prove to be true. Sometimes highly sensitive children become much more emotionally capable than their parents in just a few short years of time. What happens when emotionally immature parents lack the skills necessary to meet their children's needs? The result is a profound sense of neglect and loneliness that continues into adulthood. The good news is that these deep emotional wounds can be healed. So, as you can see, this blink explores the ideas of clinical psychologist Lindsay Gibson. We'll put back a curtain on a syndrome that is very common but rarely talked about. Deep dive into the characteristics of emotionally immature parents and discuss their methods for effective communication. So, first one is a lack of emotional intimacy results in profound loneliness for both children and adults. So before we begin, take a moment to think about your childhood. What words would you use to describe your experience? How do you feel when you think back to that time? If you grew up with an emotionally immature parent, it's a good chance that you have lingering feelings of anger, betrayal, and loneliness. You may feel even uneasy or ashamed for feeling this way. True emotional intimacy means that you feel safe enough to communicate your deepest feelings to someone. It's a profoundly fulfilling part of human relationships that makes us feel seen for who we truly are. Without it, both children and adults can experience deep feelings of loneliness. Emotional loneliness can be an isolating experience, especially when it stems from childhood neglect. If one or both of your parents were not mature enough to provide adequate emotional support, you probably felt the effects even if you didn't understand what was happening at the time. And in here it goes into a lot more and how to recognize the signs of emotional immaturity. So here we can see, to make matters worse, most emotionally immature behaviors are unconscious. The parent often has no awareness of how their actions have affected their children. Although there are different types of emotional immature parents, they all tend to share the similar personality profile, one centered around narcissism, insensitivity, and a limited tolerance for genuine emotional intimacy. Communication can be very difficult and may even feel impossible at times. Your interactions might leave you feeling completely shut down and invalidated. One of the most exhausting aspects of their personality is that they are unwilling to put in the emotional work needed to maintain a healthy relationships. These kinds of parents don't have the self-confidence to admit that they were wrong and will resist fixing their own mistakes. Ironically, emotionally immature people crave attention for their own needs but aren't likely to respond to the needs of others. Emotionally immature parents also seek to form enmeshment, Jesus, rather than intimacy. Enmeshment occurs when two people find their identity through an intense codependent relationship. This can also manifest as playing favorites with their children. So if you ever felt like a parent treated your sibling better than you, it's likely the favorite sibling who was also emotionally immature. Low levels of emotional maturity can pull people into a relationship of mutual enmeshment. Last, because they lack a solid sense of self, emotionally immature parents will usually demand that their children either mirror their own harmful behaviors or play a role that they deem appropriate. They thrive on the idea of each family member having a specific role because it helps them oversimplify complex issues, making it easier for them to deal with it. So there's 4 different styles of emotionally immature parenting. Oh, how this is gonna slap. The first type is the emotional parent. Ironically, these kinds of parents are ruled by their feelings, often swinging wildly between being over-involved and completely withdrawn from their children's lives. The most important characteristic of this type is that they often exhibit frightening levels of instability, often overwhelmed by own anxieties. They see small problems as complete disaster. This means that the entire family has to walk on eggshells around them, always careful to avoid triggering an emotional blow-up. The second type is the driven parent. This personality type is obsessively goal-oriented and perpetually busy. They are on a constant quest for perfection, which includes every detail of their lives, even their children. Although they rarely show any true empathy, these kinds of parents enjoy having complete control over their children's lives. The third type is a passive parent. As you might have guessed, these parents employ a laissez-faire style of engagement. This tends to make them less harmful than the other 3 types, but they still come with their own set of negative impacts. For instance, since passive parents tried their hardest to avoid anything that might upset them, they often willingly take a backseat to a more dominant partner. This can sometimes lead to a physical and emotional abuse from both of them and their children. The fourth and final type is the rejecting parent. Whatever mild or severe, these parents don't enjoy any level of emotional intimacy. This makes their tolerance for other people's needs non-existent. As a result, their interactions with other family members usually consist of getting angry, commanding others, or completely isolating themselves. In fact, these parents' behaviors make you wonder why they even had children in the first place. Although each type of parent undermines their child's sense of security with different behaviors, all 4 types give their children unstable emotional support and show very little empathy for them. So there's the coping mechanisms that go into it and way more. So how the heck did I get across this part? I was raised by an emotionally immature parent, and my mother was quite the show. So when I came across this book, I was quite surprised to see that, oh, hello, so I was not the only one, and it actually has a proper explanation to what happened. As I was wondering, why do I over care for people and I go bending backwards for certain, for people I'm with, for my friends, for my close people, for my partner, whatever. And every time that would happen, I was quite odd at why is it happening? I'm just doing everything to please the person. I'm kind of like really hard people pleaser. And then they're getting angry for no freaking reason, in my humble opinion. Either that or they don't see whatever I'm doing as enough. So they need more, and they don't see my actually like struggle or my pain or me just like wringing myself outwards in certain situations to kind of like, please their behavior or please, whatever they're trying to do. And that got me questioning a lot of stuff. So with this book and a lot of stuff that's in it, I got to realize that because my mom was such a neglectful person, she's the mixture of the type 1 and type 4. So that's basically, she did not care about me, and her approach to raising me was basically to dump me on everybody else. And that is why I was trying to kind of like mix and match the approaches of how people talk to me, through how others talk to me, which got to the point of me yearning for mother's love highly, but she would never express it unless it was acts of service and unless I would do something for her. So if I was not doing something for her in general, She would consider it as me being lazy and me not deserving love. And there was a lot of like even emotional and verbal and even physical abuse and stop it off. So that was horrendous in my childhood in general sense. And she was quite narcissistic, and she had me when she was like, in her early 20s. So she was quite unaware herself of how adulting worked. She had way too many issues, and her way of, dealing with stuff was not finding the right ways of, the healthy ways of coping mechanisms. She went with the toxic ones that were way more easily accessible. So, tons of partners, alcohol, which led to these situations where she would just dump me onto my grandparents and pursue her dream of like getting the right man, which never happened. And then she would just like go back and forth of trying to reach back to my dad, but they divorced. So that was like a tragedy on its own. And genuinely, that too was quite immature in his age then as well, and in his approaches to how to raise a child. Only in his like 50s, early 50s now does he realize where exactly did he fuck up and did wrong. And he genuinely now, like a few years back, he apologized to me for being quite an immature prick, because with years he started to analyze his own behaviors and understand where he went wrong, and then he got to learn more about my childhood because he was gone. I was there with mother, and it was it was a disaster. So now I look at it and it's kind of funny, not funny situation, and that kind of like all that parts, they instilled in me a lot of CPTSD, and kind of like I did walk on eggshells around my parents to find some kind of balance. I was forever afraid to get on her wrong side of it or wrong side of behavior pattern. And with her as an alcoholic to top it off at those days, she was even more obnoxious, even more rash, angry at everything. And she expressed that anger out on me because I was the easy target. So that immaturity also went into all of it. So frankly, when this book came out, I understood that I was not the only one. And there's many more of us. And frankly, we will never attribute any, laurels to our abusers, because for anyone who survived abuse, any kind of shite, it's only the survivor who managed to get through it and live. Because whoever is the abuser or whoever is the toxic person who, made a person go through very difficult, very horrible things in life, they don't get any credit for what they did. The survivor gets all the credit because they managed to pull through, to get a grip, to heal themselves, and to literally walk away, make their own life happen. Because no abuser, no immature a-hole ever would be, they're narcissistic. They'll claim it's their, attribute, it's their kind of like laurels in everything, in anything. It doesn't matter. Because, like, even now, my mom is still quite emotionally immature, and, well, she's getting better, but I mean, because it's maybe the age. But even now, when she says anything about, oh, but you ended up, being so good, or you ended up like, pulling through so well, I'm like, yeah, but that's only thanks to me. Because she's genuinely like every time tries to attribute the laurels, the, like, oh, but it was because I was so harsh on you that you got to be this way. No, it's because I managed to pull through it, because I managed to go to, into therapy to learn a lot of stuff, that I managed to pull myself through it, out of it, and find something to thrive in. And genuinely, no. No matter what they try to say and how much they're trying to get, like, oh, it's because of me. Never because of them. It's only because we managed to kind of like pull through and get all, nice and well as we are now. So as children, it can be difficult to see our parents objectively. After all, aren't we taught that our parents are supposed to be heroes? Fortunately, as we grow into adulthood, we gain the freedom to assess whether or not our parents really gave us the care we needed. The judgment zone. The first step to gaining emotional freedom is to learn how to become observational rather than reactive. To do this, you'll need to approach any interaction from a place of calm centeredness. There are many ways to do this. You can keep deep breaths, tense, and relax your muscles, or even imagine calming scenery. Next, you need to think like a scientist. If it helps, you can even pretend you're completing a field study. Mentally take note of how your parent is responding to you. What is their body language like? Do they seem calm or irritated? Are they actually listening to you, or are they just trying to appease you? Do you recognize any of the emotionally immature behavior we talked about earlier? So there's a lot to go through, and as you get through it, you get a bit more and more and more of how it works, what it does. So the most important traits of an emotionally mature person are that they are realistic and reliable. They see problems and try to find real solutions instead of fixating on how they think things should be. Because they have such a strong sense of self-awareness, they're unlikely to surprise their loved ones with unexpected inconsistencies. Another sign of emotional maturity is the ability to laugh at yourself. Mature people are not easily offended and are quick to joke about their own shortcomings. They understand that they aren't perfect and won't expect you to be either. Willing to be self-reflective, these kinds of people will put in the work to change their behavior if needed. Emotionally mature people are also typically flexible, even-tempered, and truthful. They're genuinely interested in your unique inner experience and want to get to know you. Finally, emotionally mature people are enjoyable to be around. This isn't to say that they're happy all the time, but they have an overall positive vibe that makes you want to spend time with them. Yeah. Growing up with emotionally immature parent has devastating effects on children which follow them into adulthood. Whether they internalize or externalize these negative feelings, children often develop harmful coping mechanisms that only make the problem worse. As an adult, you have the opportunity to finally break free from these old destructive thought patterns. When you learn to recognize emotionally mature behavior and embrace your true self, you can begin to heal. Not only will you be able to interact with your parents in a more objective way, but you'll be able to create relationships with people who will finally care for you in a way that you need. Yeah. So that's that. And genuinely, there's one thing that we should get into to kind of like see that what applies to us, which is the coping mechanisms, internalizers versus externalizers. There's two distinct personality types that can arise from an emotionally neglectful childhood: internalizers and externalizers. Determining which style you've adopted is an important part of healing. So what exactly sets these coping mechanisms apart? A useful analogy to distinguish between the two types is to think of them as appliances. Externalizers draw their energy from being plugged into the grid, while internalizers come with batteries included. Externalizers tend to be highly reactive and take action before they really have a chance to think. They outwardly display their depression, anxiety, or pain, and often act impulsively to distract themselves from their own issues. Not willing to be self-reflective, externalizers usually seek support from others and also blame them for their problems. On the other hand, internalizers look for solutions within themselves. Since they depend on their own inner resources, internalizers might seem to need less attention, although in reality it's the opposite. As they are highly sensitive and naturally perceptive, this personality type can't help but notice when they don't have a genuine emotional connection with their parents. As with most things in life, finding a balance is key. Externalizers can benefit from learning to find a sense of control within themselves. Internalizers need to learn how to be more comfortable seeking help from others. Whether they internalize or externalize their feelings, most children or emotionally immature parents create healing fantasies about how their lives might be better someday. These fantasies are hopeful scenarios about a future where they might finally be loved and cared for. If the child's true identity is rejected by their parents, they may also develop a role self, a part to play that secures their place in the family. For example, a naturally curious and inquisitive child might take on a more quiet, passive role in order to appease their parent. Children create these roles and fantasies to help them survive a difficult childhood. However, this only leads to a sense of disappointment when, and as adults, they can no longer keep up the facade. So, as you can see, frankly, if you ever encountered such a parent or were raised by such a parent, you might be an explosive type or a hermit type, one could say. So basically, you're either, I can throw it in, like my sister, who expresses her emotions quite loudly, blames everybody, tries to rely on everyone around herself, and basically just draws people in to help her with her emotional struggles because she is still learning how to self-soothe and self-regulate, because for her, even staying alone to like with her thoughts to think is quite hard. In my case, I internalized everything, so that led to me as an adult being quite a person who struggles with asking for help. So I would be like plowing through everything by myself and trying to literally do everything by myself. And it only took me, last 3 to 4 years maybe to start learning how to ask for help, because prior to that I was just, for some reason, 100% sure that no matter whom I ask for help, it's not gonna work out. They don't need it. And apparently, eventually, I stumbled across this one TikTok where a lady said that it's anti-community to not accept help of others or not allow help of others to you. And I was like, oh, sheesh. I felt called out. Because as a neglected child, you do wish to have your own community and you do wish to be a part of community. So that's that. So as you can see, next part is the DSM-5. So let's cover it in the next part.